102, Senator Wiener. Mr. Secretary, please read.
Assembly Bill 2943 by Assemblymember Lowe, an act relating to unlawful business practices.
Senator Wiener.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Colleagues, today I rise to present Assembly Bill 2943 by Assemblymember Lowe. This critically important bill protects LGBT people from the fraudulent practice known as conversion therapy. These efforts, also known as reparative therapy or other names, are a fraudulent business practice where people sell services and say, if you pay me money, I can make you no longer LGBT. There is absolutely no medical or scientific basis to support the sale of these supposed healthcare or psychological services. Indeed, conversion therapy is nothing short of psychological torture. And that is why the state of California has banned conversion therapy for people under the age of 18, to say we're not going to torture our LGBT children by trying to change them, quote unquote. And so this bill, very simple. You cannot sell these fraudulent services that don't work and that simply harm LGBT people. I want to be very clear. Too many LGBT people, particularly children, are committing suicide. And this happens, this unacceptable rate of suicide happens because we are told by society that there is something wrong or sick or amiss about who we are, and that we need to change to be quote unquote normal. Well, we don't need to change, and we certainly shouldn't allow people to commit fraud by selling services that harm people and that don't work. I want to be very clear what AB 2943 does not do, contrary to some of the claims that have been made during this legislative process. This bill does not prohibit the sale of the Bible. It's an argument that we've heard that's untrue. It does not in any way prohibit free speech. It doesn't prohibit anyone from speaking with a counselor, including a religious counselor, regarding their sexual orientation, as long as no money is exchanged, as long as no services are sold. Colleagues, this bill is long overdue. We should be protecting people from fraud. That's what we do in this legislature, in this state, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Wiener. Senator Anderson.
Senators, I was in Judiciary. We had a very robust, a huge discussion on this with many, many witnesses. And the one thing that struck me was if I had difficulty with my sexuality and I chose to seek out somebody to help me, counsel me through changing my sexual orientation, I could do that, and it's perfectly legal. But the notion that somebody who perhaps started gay can't seek out the same help. Now, I started out as heterosexual, but if I wanted to become homosexual or anything else, I could get that help. Now, we're not talking about people under 18. We're talking about adults. And we're not talking about con artists driving up and down our street with loudspeakers saying, hey, conversion therapy here. We're talking about adults seeking help because they're questioning. And because they're questioning to be straight, that somehow that's wrong and evil. But if they question to be gay, that's good and acceptable. You can't have it both ways. Now, I've never experienced it. I've never gone through it. And I think any time that you have anything that you question in your life, it's got to be exceptionally painful and difficult. And I don't want to make it more difficult for those who are seeking the help that they desire. At any time that they're not forced to go through this, at any time they can say, this isn't helping me, I'm going to seek something else. But when we had hundreds of people come forward and speak to me and say it helped them, I don't want to deny them that access to help. And that's what we're doing today with this bill. Under the ruse of protecting people, we're not cutting it off on both ways. We're only saying the only help that you can get is to leave a straight lifestyle to join another lifestyle. But if you want to return to a state or move to a straight lifestyle, then that's evil. And I believe that's just inconsistent. But I certainly understand. I haven't walked in those shoes. And my heart goes out to all those folks in conflict. And I want to give them the most resources possible so that they can be confident and happy in their life. And this bill will strip them of that ability. Remember, this is only for adults. They're all opting in. Nobody's recruiting them. No one's holding them against their will. No one's forcing them to go through torture. They're requesting it. And what we're saying is you don't have a right to get health care help. I urge a no vote.
Thank you, Senator Anderson. Senator Morell.
Thank you, Madam President. A question to the author, please.
Senator Weiner, who is the floor jockey, would you be willing to take a question?
Yes.
Yes, please proceed.
Yes, sir. My understanding from you is on this bill, if we, that it's not going to affect the Bible. Is that correct at churches? What if a pastor or a counselor recommends the Bible and sells a Bible to someone being helped and there's an exchange of money? Is that counselor then liable for selling that Bible and pointing out chapter 1 of Romans? Or if a church bookstore sells a book, how to counsel people out of homosexuality, whether a book by an author or a Bible, is that consumer fraud?
The bill does not prohibit the sale of books or Bibles, doesn't prohibit people from talking to their priest. What it prohibits is someone saying, I'm a counselor, I'm going to sell you a service to make you not gay, and saying that that is fraudulent, which it is, because there's no scientific basis that works. But no, it does not prohibit the sale of books.
Can you also
Bible.
refer me to the bill, the paragraph on that? And forgive me, I read through that, but can you give me the page and a paragraph of the bill on that, where that specific language is in there? Because I've got a lot of pastors asking me that question.
Yeah, I need to look at this and get you the site, but there were amendments taken specifically around the Bible. This does not prohibit the sale of books or Bibles.
And around churches and counselors, Christian counselors also.
As long as they are not charging the person money for the services, you can go talk to your priest or a counselor or anyone else you want to. But this is about saying that if you sell fraudulent services that have no scientific basis, that's fraud. Just like we would say a doctor who says,
I got that.
Let him finish,
You're all
Senator
clear
Morell.
now. The one I'm trying to get to.
Senator Morell, you asked him a question. Please let him finish.
Okay.
Just
I'm
like
just
we-
trying to get to the point. I just
we-
want to
I
know
know
where
you
the
are,
bill
but let
is
him
at.
finish.
just like we would say if a doctor said, I can wave my magic wand and do X, Y, or Z fake treatment on you, we would say that's fraud as well, and that's what this is about.
Okay, but what I'd like to know is the page, paragraph where it's at before we vote on this, if that's possible.
We'll provide that
Just
to
for
you.
clarification. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you, Senator Morell. Senator Stern.
I just wanted to stand in solidarity with my colleague from San Francisco in support of this bill. We went through this extensively in committee. He iterated the point, but I'll reiterate. I've had many pastors, rabbis, folks in the faith community reach out, concerned that this is somehow going to inhibit your right to preach, your right to speech, your right to seek counsel, however flawed in some cases that counsel may be. But you can still seek that counsel. But it is the sale of counsel. It is the sale of a Bible that we're talking about. Now, This bill does not prevent practices to otherwise promote healthy and romantic relationships. It does not it does not include psychotherapies that provide acceptance, support, and understanding of clients and the facilitation of clients copying these networks. And I don't know much about Bibles because I was raised Jewish, but I don't know that Bible sales are actually the most prominent way that people distribute that information. If folks are using mass quantities of marketing materials and building a business model based on an industry, that's to me what this bill is targeting here. Folks can have their relationship with God, with their religious counsel, but we cannot condone a business practice and a for-profit industry that is based on a system that has no scientific basis. With that, I respectfully ask for all of your aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Stern. Senator Gaines.
Thank you, Madam President and members. And I rise in opposition to this bill, and I think it goes way beyond a business practice. I think it's an outright violation of the First Amendment, the freedom of association, the freedom of speech. And if you are an individual and you're questioning your sexuality, you ought to have the ability to speak to whoever you want to speak to. You ought to be able to pay for that service if you feel that that is necessary. So I'm very concerned from a constitutional standpoint that First Amendment rights are being violated as a result of this legislation, and that we aren't really taking a serious look at that aspect. I'd be willing to bet that this ends up in the courts and there will be a court challenge to this legislation because of that violation. Why shouldn't I have the ability to speak to who I want to speak, to seek the counsel from whoever I want to seek the counsel, to pay for that counseling, to determine what I want to do with my life as it relates to sexuality? And it could be either way. If you're in a position where you want that you're a gay and you want counseling, you're having those feelings of being gay, and you're having you want counseling to help you with that transition, that's great. But it ought to go both ways. If you're gay and you're thinking, well, maybe I'm not, shouldn't I be able to seek that counsel with whoever I want to talk to and have that freedom? So on that basis, that is the real challenge that I have with this legislation, that we are a nation of freedom. We are a nation of freedom of speech. We are a nation where we can self-direct, and certainly we can also seek guidance from God through this whole process. But even as a non-believing American, we should have the ability to seek the counsel that we think is fit for our particular needs. And for that reason, I am in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gaines. Senator Galgiani.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As the member of the LGBT caucus who came out much later in life, I think that I can share a much different perspective about this. And first of all, I want to thank all of my colleagues on the floor, both Democrats and Republicans, for being so accepting of me when I did come out, because when you knew me in the assembly, I didn't even know for myself that I was gay. It took me much longer to figure it out when I didn't have work as the only thing that was in my life, and I started to realize what I wanted for my future. It's a very painful process coming out to those that you know and that you love, because they have known you in a certain way all of your life, and there's this assumption that you're going to be like everybody else and that someday you're going to have a husband or a wife, and you struggle to figure out how to tell everybody one at a time that you're different and that you've chosen something else for your life. It's a very threatening, scary process. And everyone in our LGBT caucus has gone through that process in a different way, whether they're older or younger. And you see us here in the caucus and we speak about the fact that we are gay and we talk about bills and all of that, but I just want to remind you that going through that process is a very scary thing. What this bill is about is conversion therapy, not just therapy, but the word conversion. And conversion means that there's an ultimate goal and an outcome. And the goal and the outcome of this kind of therapy is that the person who believes that they are gay or who is questioning that will ultimately then make the decision for themselves that, okay, I can be not gay. I can change who I think I am or who I'm questioning that I am. Let me tell you, it is much easier to fit in and be like everybody else. When somebody finally reaches the point where they're questioning and they think that they are gay, they've gone through so much turmoil in their own mind and in their own heart. The most difficult thing to admit is to admit to yourself that you're gay, because you know that you're going to face being ostracized by people that you know and love. You wonder if they'll still accept you, though. You wonder if they'll treat you the same. So by the time you reach that point where you're wanting to talk to a therapist or somebody about it, you need love and support and respect for who you are. What you don't need is for someone to try to change you and tell you that you shouldn't be who you are, because the process is about being honest with yourself and honest with the people that you love. So again, I don't expect people to fully understand, but the word conversion, it defines an outcome. It means that you go through the therapy so that you can become ungay. And by the time you've realized that you're gay, you've struggled so much already. And that's the difference. That's what this bill is about. It's the point of conversion. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Senator Galgiani. Senator Allen.
Thank you, members. I certainly want to associate myself with comments made from folks on this side of the aisle. As Vice Chair of the Jewish Caucus, I want to assure my colleague that we certainly do have Bibles as well. But I do, speaking to that point, this was an area of some concern. I know that there were several editorial pages who raised concerns about the bill in its previous form. And I just want to give an opportunity for us to clarify the questions from our good colleague from the Inland Empire. It's my understanding that the bill used to say that it used to make it unlawful to not only sell services but also sell goods. And that was the key issue that was raised by some of the opponents who were concerned about the possible issue of prohibiting the sale of Bibles. Now the bill has been changed to, that language about goods has been dropped. And so it now simply says services. And I would just wanted to ask a question of the author to confirm that that's correct. That's my understanding.
Senator Wiener, will you take a question?
Yes, Madam President.
Please proceed.
And that is correct. As I said earlier, this does not prohibit the sale of goods. It's of services. And I'll, to the Senator's previous question, section, it's 1770, section A, subsection 28, and I'll read it. And this is the definition of what will constitute fraud. Advertising, offering for sale, or selling services constituting sexual orientation change efforts to an individual. There's no reference to goods. That was an amendment taken earlier in the process. This is only about services, not goods. The Bible, books, it's not covered.
So thank you, good Senator. And as I think that clarifies the issue that was raised by our friend from the Inland Empire, that the bill is now very clear that this does not implicate the sale of goods, it's services. So the Bible issue that was raised earlier is moot.
Thank you, Senator Allen. Senator Morlock.
Thank you, Madam President. This particular bill, I would call it the bill of the year. It has generated the most significant amount of calls, emails, and contacts this year for at least my office, and it seems to have certainly woken up a particular constituency. It also, for me, had the largest turnout for a committee meeting. We had an hour and a half of people lined up, not as big as SB 277, but pretty substantial for me, being on a committee and listening. These people were passionate and they had a determination. And so it brings to mind, maybe we have some misconceptions on conversion therapy. I obviously oppose shock treatments, marbles in the mouth, lobotomies. These were all provided to us as conversion therapy, and certainly would oppose all three of those. But I also know the power of the Holy Spirit and how God can perform miracles and healings. And so with this bill, we have a collision between the physical and spiritual realms, and it's been quite an interesting year. I don't know how to explain spiritual matters on the floor. But during the Joint Committee on Rules Subcommittee on Sexual Harassment Prevention and Response, I asked several times, was there counseling to assist victims? You know, in this very critical area of serious wounds, we need counseling. We heard the pain in Judiciary Committee with the personal testimony of Chantel Cousineau. Senator Jackson had her as a witness, and I, as vice chair, I let her go for 9 minutes. I didn't cut her off at 2 minutes. She had a lot to share. She was deeply impacted, and you could certainly see that she was from her experience of violation. And victims want and need counseling. They need counseling by trained psychologists and psychiatrists, and they should be compensated. You don't muzzle the ox. But AB 2943 is stating that utilizing such professionals and their services for those who perhaps after a traumatic sexual violation perhaps must not compensate such services if they wish counseling. And that just doesn't make economic sense. Does Sacramento want to create a black market or an underground service? I think we're missing a key component of this discussion. It's these individuals who, after dramatic spiritual encounter with God, have had a miraculous conversion with their sexual preference and sex lives, and they've come to us and they've said, boy, now we're really getting disenfranchised, and how do we deal with that after being in one group and going to the next? And they risk their private intimacy with us in giving their testimonies in committee. So I think this is why the faith-based community has contacted all of us, and I appreciate even the senator from Carmel who received a lot of Bibles and gave them to the local rescue mission. I think, you know, good thing, but I don't think any professional can guarantee an outcome. I don't think a surgeon can. I don't think a mechanic can. And so I don't know how we're somehow focused on this word, a guaranteed outcome. Legislating bad apples is what we should be doing. And then we let the marketplace weed out the guys that are just wasting our time and are unnecessary. We had a bill 2 years ago requiring that a sign be posted in crisis prevention or pregnancy crisis centers, and that was just recently overturned by the U.S. Supreme Court. I think this particular bill may face the same result, which would require the spending of a lot of taxpayer dollars to fight this out in the courtrooms. So colleagues, I would just encourage you to be careful when getting between an honest patient seeking answers to an honest concern with an honest professional counselor who is willing to listen and to pray with his or her client, because God can change hearts. So why punish the messengers or the therapists? Seeking spiritual and physical purity should be encouraged, and I respectfully request a no vote on AB 2943.
Thank you, Senator Morlock. Senator Portantino.
Thank you, Madam President and members. I rise today in strong support of AB 2943, and I want to share two stories. 44 years ago, my older brother came out to my mom, who was a traditional Italian widow at the time, all by herself as a single mom with 4 kids. And there were people who said to my mom, "You did something wrong. Mm-hmm. This is your fault." But she knew instinctively that she loved my brother, and she knew instinctively she did do nothing wrong, and he is and was who he was, and that is what she loved and appreciated about him. And her overwhelming love and acceptance from my brother cut through those who were trying to say that there was something wrong with him, there was something wrong with her, there was something wrong with her parenting. And her love made a whole generation accept and appreciate my brother for who he was. And it was a magical moment in our family because her cloud was so positive and so loving that it really helped people come to grips with my brother. Now, one could argue that that was 4 decades ago and we've changed as a society, and that's no longer a case. Well, flash forward 44 years, and there's a school in my district that in their parent and student handbook, it says to high school students that if you feel attracted to somebody of the same sex, you must go to counseling. It's mandatory in that school's handbook.
Wow.
If you feel attracted to somebody of the same sex, you must agree to go to counseling. Now, first of all, the school shouldn't be making that decision for a student to begin with. And second of all, we as a society have a fundamental right to protect that student, that young person who may be forced into a counseling situation, to make sure that that counselor isn't further harming that student by following forth on this implication that there must be something wrong with that young person who is just being who they are. And so that's why this bill is important, because here we are today with a school implying something that people whispered to my mom 44 years ago in their handbook, that a student who's just being who they are has something wrong with them. And so we have to make sure that there aren't people out there preying on that ignorance, preying upon that notion that there's something wrong with a young person versus just accepting that young person with the same love that my mother accepted my brother. And so that's why this is necessary, because there are people promoting and practicing faulty psychology and faulty care for somebody that should be loved, accepted, and respected. And so I stand in strong support of 2943, because this issue still needs this appropriate solution.
Thank you, Senator Portantino. Senator Lara.
Thank you, Madam President, members. I'm proud to be a co-author of this important bill with the other members of our LGBT caucus. And, proud to say on this floor, after years of struggling with my own spirituality, to say that God makes no mistakes and that I was absolutely born this way. And the issue with conversion, it already implies that there's something wrong with you, that you're somehow not normal. And it is those feelings that perpetuated the brutal murder of Gabriel Fernandez and Anthony Avalos by the hands of their own parents. Children that were tortured, children that were made to eat feces, that were burned with cigarettes because somehow they were not normal. Study after study shows that conversion therapy is ineffective, damaging, and truly counterproductive. We have, in California, of course, as you all know, banned conversion therapy for minors. Under a bill I authored We are now requiring the licensing of schools and outdoor programs that target vulnerable LGBT youth, including these so-called conversion camps. For the first time now, the Department of Social Services will have the opportunity to see what really is happening in these camps and to see if people are properly trained. So this bill is a perfect complement to that. You know, that law will be fully implemented in the coming months. We know, members, trust me, we know, conversion therapy is a sham. There is not a practice out there that can change who I or my colleagues love. It's a matter of fact. And let me be clear, members. Let me be absolutely clear. We are gay by nature, but absolutely fabulous by choice. I ask that you support AB 2943.
Thank you, Senator Lara. Senator Pan.
Thank you, Madam President. Senators, I too stand in support of this resolution, and while people have spoken about their spirituality and the legality, I make note that this passed through a Judiciary Committee. As a pediatrician, I do want to speak about the science. In fact, permission to read?
Without objection.
Yes, so I just want to state, for example, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. I just want to quote from their policy statement. Based on the scientific evidence, the AACAP asserts that such conversion therapies or other interventions imposed with the intent of promoting a particular sexual orientation and/or gender as a preferred outcome lack scientific credibility and clinical utility. Additionally, there's evidence that such interventions are harmful. As a result, conversion therapy should not be part of any behavioral health treatment of children and adolescents. I would make note this statement is also, similar statements are supported by the American Psychological Association, other mental health and medical organizations. And I would point out that here in this body, state government, our job is to protect the people of California. And because of that, we often pass laws and regulations about products and goods that are sold to people, to our constituents, to the people of California. And if they are of little benefit based on false premises and are harmful, we forbid those. And so with that, I urge support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Pan. Senator Wiener, would you like to close?
Yes, Madam President, colleagues, thank you for that, this discussion. And I think it's always good to have these debates in public. I think it also shows for those who are under the misimpression that the LGBT community's fights are over, that we won marriage equality, we got rid of Don't Ask, Don't Tell, so therefore it's all good, when we know that we still don't have a federal civil rights law, that it's still legal to fire people, to evict people in most states in this country because they are LGBT, that LGBT people are still being beaten and murdered. We have a long way to go. And regarding this bill, and I'm glad that my friend from Orange County raised the issues of lobotomies and electric shock therapy and institutionalization. It wasn't that long ago that people like me, people like the senator from Bell Gardens, like our pro tem, like the senator from Stockton, not that long ago that we would have been at risk of being put into an institution, of being lobotomized, of being subjected to electric shock therapy, for no reason other than being LGBT. And we would never tolerate those procedures today. We would never tolerate it. It is absolutely abominable that it ever happened. It is torture. It's a violation of basic human rights. And yet, you still have people today, yes, they're not lobotomizing people, but people who are going out and basically selling snake oil and saying, if you pay me money, I'll make you not LGBT. That is a lie, it's fraud, it has no scientific basis, and we should not be allowing that in the state of California, and we should declare it to be a fraudulent business practice. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Weiner. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen. Aye. Anderson. No. Atkins. Aye. Bates. No. Bell. Aye. Berryhill. Bradford. Aye. Canella. Chang. De Leon. Aye. Delgado. Aye. Dodd. Aye. Fuller. Gaines. No. Galgiani. Aye. Glazer. Aye. Hernandez. Aye. Hertzberg. Aye. Hill. Aye. Wisso. Aye. Jackson. Aye. Lara. Aye. Leva. Aye. McGuire. Aye. Mitchell. Aye. Monning. Aye. Morlock. No. Morrell. No. Wynn. No. Nilsson. No. Pan. Aye. Porcentino. Aye. Roth. Skinner. Aye. Stern. Aye. Stone. No. Vidak. No. Wachowski. Aye. Weiner. Aye. Wilk. No.
Please call the absent members.
Berryhill. Canella. Chang. No. Fuller. Roth.
Ayes 25, noes 11. The measure passes. Members, we are moving to motions and resolutions at this time.